Deborah sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the walls of her once beautiful home. The golden curtains swayed gently from the afternoon breeze, but she felt nothing but emptiness. The house was silent, too silent. Samuel had finally left. The night before had been the worst argument of their marriage. The words they had thrown at each other still echoed in her mind. "You think I don't know? You think I haven't noticed?" Samuel had yelled, his voice shaking the walls. "Notice what, Samuel?" she had asked, already knowing what was coming. "You've changed, Deborah. You're not the woman I married. I know about you and Michael." His words had sliced through her heart. She had stood there, unable to deny it, unable to defend herself, because it was true. Samuel had stormed out of the house, leaving behind a broken marriage and an unborn child that did not belong to him. Loneliness and judgment. For weeks, Deborah stayed indoors. She couldn't face the world. The whispers had already started spreading through the neighborhood. She betrayed her husband. After all Samuel did for her, she still ran back to her ex. What kind of woman behaves like that? She heard them all, even the market women. The ones who used to greet her warmly now gave her strange looks. Her parents were no different. Her mother sat across from her in the living room, shaking her head. "We warned you, Deborah. Love is not enough. Now look at your life. You have disgraced us." Deborah wanted to cry, to scream, but she had no strength left. "I just want to be happy, Mama." Her mother sighed. Happiness does not come from betraying your home. But wasn't it Samuel who had left? Wasn't it him who had refused to forgive her? No one saw her pain. No one understood that she was drowning in regret. Running back to Michael. One night, when the loneliness became unbearable, Deborah picked up her phone. Her fingers hovered over the screen before she finally dialed the number. Michael answered on the first ring. "Deborah?" His voice sent shivers through her. It had been so long. "Can we talk?" she whispered. They met at a quiet lounge in Lagos. The moment she saw him, memories came rushing back. Their childhood laughter, the stolen kisses, the night she had spent dreaming of a future with him. "You look beautiful," Michael said, his eyes never leaving her face. She smiled weakly. "I don't feel beautiful." He reached for her hand across the table. "Come home with me." She hesitated. "Michael, I don't know if..." "Deborah, I never stopped loving you. I know things have been hard, but I can make you happy again. I can take care of you and the baby." Her heart ached. It was everything she had wanted to hear. A fresh start, a second chance. That night, she followed him home. Michael's change. At first, everything felt like a dream. Michael treated her with kindness, made her laugh, reminded her of the girl she used to be before life tore her apart. But soon, the cracks began to show. He had mood swings. One moment, he was gentle and loving. The next, he was angry and restless. One evening, she heard him arguing with someone on the phone. His voice was low, but full of fury. "Don't ever call me again. I said I'll handle it. If you say anything, I swear." Deborah froze at the doorway. "Michael?" He turned quickly, forcing a smile. "Hey, love. Just work issues." But something about his face made her uneasy. A week later, she found a knife under his pillow. She held it in her hands, confused. Why would Michael have a weapon in the house? When she confronted him, he laughed. "Lagos isn't safe, my love. A man must protect his home." She wanted to believe him, but something in his eyes, dark, almost dangerous, made her question everything. Samuel's threat. One evening, as Deborah sat in the living room of Michael's apartment, There was a loud knock at the door. Michael opened it, and standing there was Samuel. The air became thick with tension. "What do you want?" Michael asked coldly. Samuel stepped inside, his eyes burning with anger. "We need to talk." Deborah's heart pounded as she stood up. "Samuel, please. Let's not do this." Samuel ignored her. He turned to Michael. "You think you've won? You think you can steal my wife, get her pregnant, and walk away?" Michael smirked. "She was never truly yours, was she?" Before Deborah could react, Samuel lunged at Michael. The two men crashed into the table, sending glasses and plates shattering to the ground. "Stop it!" Deborah screamed. Michael punched Samuel in the jaw, but Samuel fought back, grabbing Michael by the collar and slamming him against the wall. "You will never be happy," Samuel spat, wiping blood from his mouth. Michael laughed, his breath heavy. "We'll see about that." Samuel turned to Deborah, his eyes filled with disappointment. "I hope you know what you've done." And with that, he walked away. Deborah stood frozen, her chest rising and falling rapidly. "Michael, what just happened?" Michael wiped the blood off his lip and smiled. "Don't worry, my love. I'll take care of everything." His words should have comforted her. But for the first time, Deborah felt a cold chill run down her spine. Something about Michael was wrong, and she had just walked into a life she might not escape from. Deborah sat on the edge of the bed in Michael's apartment, her hands trembling as she thought about the fight between him and Samuel. She had never seen Samuel that angry before, and worse, she had never seen Michael react with such aggression. "Don't worry, my love. I'll take care of everything." Michael's words echoed in her mind, but instead of comfort, they sent a cold shiver down her spine. Something about him felt dangerous. Michael's temper begins to show. At first, things seemed normal. Michael still treated her well, cooking for her, rubbing her feet after a long day, and whispering promises of a bright future. But small things began to change. One evening, as they sat on the couch watching TV, Deborah playfully took Michael's phone. "Let me see what you're always smiling at," she teased. Michael's reaction was instant. He grabbed her wrist so hard she winced. "Don't ever touch my phone," he said, his voice low and sharp. Deborah pulled her hand back, staring at him. "It was just a joke, Michael." His face softened immediately and he sighed. "I'm sorry, my love. I didn't mean to scare you. Work has been stressing me." But Deborah couldn't shake off the feeling that it wasn't just work. Strange disappearances. Michael started leaving the house late at night. He never told her where he was going, and whenever she asked, his answers were vague. Just business. Meeting a friend. "You worry too much, my love." One night, curiosity got the best of her. When he left at midnight, she quietly followed him. She trailed behind as he entered a dark, quiet street. From a distance, she saw him talking to two men near an abandoned building. One of them handed him an envelope, and Michael nodded before walking away. Deborah's heart pounded. What was he involved in? She hurried back home before he could catch her, but from that night, her trust in Michael started to crumble. The bloodstained shirt. One afternoon, while doing laundry, Deborah found a white shirt in Michael's pile, stained with blood. Her hands shook as she held it up. Had he been in another fight? Had he done something worse? She didn't want to believe it, but the fear inside her kept growing. That night, she confronted him. "Michael, what happened to your shirt?" He looked up from his phone, his face unreadable. "I cut myself. This is too much blood for a small cut." Michael sighed, rubbing his temples. "Deborah, you need to stop asking questions. Just trust me." Trust him? How could she? Deborah didn't sleep that night. She knew she had made a mistake. Michael was not the man she thought he was. Samuel's warning. A few days later, Deborah was leaving the market when she saw Samuel's car parked nearby. He stepped out and walked toward her. "We need to talk." She hesitated, looking around. "Samuel, I don't want any trouble." "Deborah, listen to me. Do you even know the kind of man you're living with?" Deborah's heart raced. "What do you mean?" Samuel pulled out his phone and showed her a news article. "Man found dead in Lagos. Suspected gang involvement." She scanned the article. The name wasn't familiar, but the crime scene was close to where she had seen Michael that night. "What does this have to do with Michael?" she asked, her voice shaky. "I had someone look into him. He's been involved in criminal activities for years. That man was found dead the same night Michael was seen in that area. Doesn't that tell you something?" Deborah shook her head, refusing to believe it. "Michael loves me, Samuel. He wouldn't." "Wake up, Deborah," Samuel snapped. "This man is not who you think he is." Tears welled up in her eyes. She wanted to run. She wanted to believe it was all a lie. But deep down, she knew Samuel was telling the truth. Michael wasn't just dangerous. He was deadly. Michael's rage. That night, Deborah decided to leave. She waited until Michael had gone out again. She packed her clothes quickly, stuffing them into a bag. But just as she zipped it up, the door swung open. Michael stood there, his eyes dark, his fists clenched. "Where do you think you're going?" Her throat went dry. "Michael, I need some space." He stepped forward, closing the door behind him. "You spoke to Samuel, didn't you?" Deborah's breath caught in her throat. "Michael, please." "That man doesn't know when to stop." He exhaled sharply. "But don't worry, my love. I'll handle him." His words sent fear straight to her bones. "Michael, no. Please, just let this go." But his mind was already made up. And Deborah knew, this time, someone would not survive. The deadly confrontation. The next evening, Deborah tried to warn Samuel. "Michael is coming for you." Samuel was silent for a moment. "Let him come." That night, as if following the script, Michael arrived at Samuel's house. Deborah stood frozen as the two men faced each other, their hatred thick in the air. "You ruined my life, Samuel," Michael hissed. Samuel smirked. "You ruined yours." Michael lunged first, throwing a punch. Samuel blocked it, hitting him back. The fight was brutal. Fists flew, furniture crashed, blood spilled. Deborah screamed, begging them to stop, but they didn't hear her. Michael grabbed a bottle, smashing it against the table, turning it into a weapon. He raised it to strike. But suddenly, the sound of sirens filled the air. The police had arrived. Michael's arrest. The officers stormed the house, pulling Michael away. "Let me go," he roared, his face twisted with fury. One officer turned to Deborah. "Are you safe, ma'am?" She nodded weakly, watching as Michael was handcuffed and dragged away. Samuel, bruised and bleeding, looked at her. "Are you happy now?" She had no answer. Michael had once been the love of her life. Now, he was a monster she had barely escaped, the weight of her choices. Days later, the news spread. Notorious criminal arrested after violent confrontation. Michael was sentenced to life in prison. Samuel moved on, washing his hands of Deborah. And Deborah? She was left alone, a single mother, a woman who had